Thank you all. I'm waiting. Come on up to the front, everybody. No, I mean, you're good. Not anymore. You're fine.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen.
All right. I'm waiting 30 seconds until Shoya gives me the green light. Green light? Okay, thank you. Thank you all for coming. So this is a talk, it's actually a series of talks I gave in Cali. It's on YouTube. I gave 3 talks on this topic, but I'm going to talk just in terms of, as parents, what we can do, and as congregation members and as parishioners, and just as a community, what we can do about this issue, because it's not an issue that's, it's not about how do we fix this problem. It's the reaction to a problem that is in us. Does that make sense? So the issue is in us, and what sometimes youth are reacting to is something that's actually very, very legitimate. Okay, and that's why they're leaving, and they're leaving for good reason. And we should figure out what it is we're doing that's causing this. And it's sort of, oops, there it is. And this quote kind of inspires me to think about this topic. It's by Desmond Tutu. It's wonderful. He says, there comes a point where we need to stop pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in. Right? And so I think a lot of times what happens is Abuna gets a call, the servant gets a call, help, my 22-year-old is done with church and they don't want to come back to church and blah, blah, blah. So when does the call come? At 20. Right? And we just keep finding the 22-year-olds, and we keep pulling them out of the river. Everyone dives into the river, help, 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 right? But the 22 decided to stop coming to church when they were up. Yeah, hold it. Oh, because I'm blocking the thing, my fat fingers. So the 22-year-old decided not to when they were in junior high, okay. And that was when the problem started, and it lay dormant for many, many years. All right. So I want to give you kind of just a brief history of Sunday school, because I think this is an important thing to consider. So Sunday school was introduced, as you all know, Sunday school was introduced by Nazir Gayed, Pope Shenouda, Habib Girgis, Saint Habib Girgis, and this was like in the 1950s, okay? And Egypt in the 1950s was it was a time of ignorance in the church, right? You had priests who didn't give sermons. You had priests who didn't know anything about the church. They had inherited because their dad was a priest, okay? So the church was really an ignorant place. So Pope Shenouda, Nazir Gayed, got a bunch of books. He put them all in some central location, right? And all the servants would drive to the central location, read the books, the one copy, write down on a piece of paper the notes, and then drive to these different villages and give this message. Okay? So it was a method of information dissemination. Okay? And when you don't have any technology and you don't have anything better, that's the best you're going to do. Read a book, take some notes, go out there and disseminate. Okay? Well, that was then, right? And their problem was ignorance, lack of resources, lack of knowledge, and we don't have that problem now, right? We have the internet, right? I want a lesson on St. Athanasius, I can just Google it, okay? I can get as many lessons as I want. There's PDFs of every book on earth. Sermons, there's hundreds of thousands of hours of sermons. Good sermons, bad sermons, spiritual sermons, educational sermons, just on my phone, touch of a button. There are apps dedicated to the best sermon givers out there, right? So the Sunday school, the need of Sunday school has changed, right? But yet we seem to use the same model that we used in 1950 in a time of ignorance when people were illiterate and there were 7 books in the whole country, and we're applying it to whatever year this is, 2024, right? When we have AI, okay? We have to think about how we want to change the model, right? Because we can't use the same model for a different problem. The problem now isn't education, right? It isn't resources. We all have resources. All of us have tons of Bibles at home and kids' Bibles and everything else for the kids. That's not the issue. Right now the issue is anxiety. It's depression. It's loneliness, right? These are the issues our youth are facing. They're not facing, gee, I really don't know anything about St. Athanasius and I have no idea how I could possibly learn it. That's not the problem, right? So the Sunday school, the service has to change to adapt to these issues and not the issues of 1950 Egypt. Now, the point I want to make here for the parents is I just explained to you what Sunday school is all about, right? So that is not the same as Sunday school raises my kids. Sunday school teaches my kids everything they need to know about spirituality. Sunday school does nothing of the sort. You're the parents. You have to parent, right? You have to teach your kids. You have to raise your kids. The church is not going to raise them for you. The Sunday school servants are not going to raise them for you, right? It's your job, you know? I mean, and every once in a while you just see, just today, forgive me, right? Just a bunch of boys running crazy dressed as deacons in the little boys. Just running around, hitting things, throwing things, playing tag, blah, 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 right? Where are their parents? I mean, I don't know if they're your kids. I'm sorry if they are. Where are their parents? I'm looking at you like, did you just throw a white tonya on the kid and then dump him and say, hey, go stand up there because I don't want to parent you during church because you bug me. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of stress for me to parent you. So go down, put a white tonya and go run around. Where's the parenting? Where's the teaching? Where's the stand next to me where I teach you the liturgy? I explain to you what's happening. I explain to you the prayers. You see me pray together. I teach you how to pray through osmosis. Where's that? You know, so we can't be dumping our kids either on the deacon system or on the Sunday school system. We have to parent ourselves. And let me explain to you what that means. It does not raise spiritual children. Okay. All right. When I talk about the church, and sometimes we think about why youth are leaving, I want to give you just a very small example. Today actually works out. In the sermon, over and over, I repeated the phrase, the liturgy starts when we leave church. The liturgy begins when we leave church. The Eucharist is a time where I take from Christ and I give it out to the world. So when I'm leaving church, you should be reminding me, the Eucharist, the liturgy starts when you leave. It's time to show the light of Christ to everyone. It's time to show God's love to everyone. It's time to show God's mercy to everyone when you walk out that door. The liturgy begins when we leave church. Now go and be a light to the world. Give everyone you see the same love you just received. You have come and drank from the fountain of life. Be a fountain of hope and love for all those you meet this week. Isn't that beautiful? Is that nice? I want to ask you all, how many times you've heard those messages as you're walking out of the church? Tell you what, I'm 53. I've heard it once, twice. Okay? Now what do you hear when you walk out of the church? Don't spit for 9 hours. Don't swim for 9 hours. Don't chew gum for 9 hours. Don't throw up for 9 hours. Don't walk barefoot in case you get a small cut for 9 hours. Don't brush your teeth for 9 hours. What is that? I don't know. Where'd the 9 hours come from? I don't know. I want you to find me one father who wrote anything like this in talking about the Eucharist. Not going to find much, right? This is the stuff we really care about. Like that, those 6 points there, that's God. That's the most important thing on earth. And we make sure we remind our kids over and over and over and over again, be careful, don't do that. What about like being love? What about not judging? You know, and then you watch people that, you know, they don't even make it out the door and they start fighting and judging one another. What about like the stuff Jesus said, the important things, versus this? Now again, these may be spiritual practices. I don't think they're spiritual practices. They're kind of cute things that people have concocted, right? And Do they have some value? They might. But this isn't our religion, right? But when we're talking to our kids, if this is all we're talking to them about, at some point they wake up and they go, yeah, this isn't Christianity. This isn't anything the Bible said. This isn't anything the fathers said, right? And then the kids kind of wake up, right? Because they've seen that what I'm doing at home is I'm cussing out my wife, I'm cussing out my friends, I'm cussing out my in-laws, I'm being very selfish, I'm being very hypocritical, I'm being very angry, I'm being very judgmental, but then I tell them don't spit for 9 hours after communion, because God may be upset by that. And the kid's looking at you like, bro, you're missing the point. You seem to missed it. Did you read the Gospels when you read the Gospels? Because this isn't the Gospel. And this is the primary thing that the kids tell us. My parents, fake. Church, fake. People, fake. And sometimes I can't disagree. And maybe it's not because we mean to be fake. It's because we're emphasizing, as a community, things that aren't the thing. Right? We're emphasizing the wrong thing. I really shouldn't show this video. I'll move on. I've done enough damage here. This is, I think I showed this video when I came to talk to deacons, yeah. Let's go. Yeah, okay. Okay, it's the video, it's an Instagram clip of a clergy member giving a sermon. And I'm going to put sermon in quotes, loose quotes. And his sermon is about how when Abuna says, when the deacon says, worship God in fear and trembling, that you should bow and not sit. And he gives a sermon on this. And the tone he gives is very judgmental. It's very angry. It's very sarcastic. And not Christian. And his whole point is you're supposed to bow and not sit. What kind of point is that? What kind of sermon is that? Right? And the way he delivers it is in such a way that if you do that, you become judgmental of those who don't do that, because you're now righteous because you bow instead of sit. Right? And unfortunately, these are the kind of things that sometimes we really get hung up on. And that's not the message of the gospel. All right, so I want to point out a few things. So just to explain sort of the background, I was asked by our diocese to kind of go through this process and try to figure out why youth are leaving the church. And I spent a long time doing this. I read a lot. I talked to a lot of people. I talked to a lot of people who just aren't in the church, but people who have left the church. Looked at surveys, not just Orthodox surveys, Catholic surveys, Protestant surveys, and the themes are very, very recurring, right? You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out, right? And so I kind of want to share them with you and see what we can do as parents and as a community and as servants to address these issues. Okay. I'll just go through the slide and then I'll be done, I think, by the time I get through it. Disconnect between religious practices and a genuine relationship with Christ. So one of the things the youth complain about is we are told to have religious practices. We do religious things, right? Obviously the big ones. We go to church, we fast, we stay up, we do vigils, we have certain prayers. And somehow, in our minds, we believe these religious practices are what we need to do to earn salvation. Okay? By doing these religious practices, I earn my salvation. Right? Now, of course, what I just said, that sentence, is a heresy. Doing religious practices to earn salvation, that's heresy. Okay? But somehow we think that. And somehow we kind of impart that to our kids. You have to go. You have to go on this day. You have to do this thing. No, St. Paul says, all things are lawful to you, but not all things are helpful. Christianity is a religion of freedom. Even the story of the prodigal son, he said, I want to go spend money with the harlots. And he said, knock yourself out. Right? And so, our church isn't a church of force. It's not a church of do that thing. Right? Force someone to do something. And we have to think about the why, because the why is as important, if not more important, than the what. Okay? So, I mean, and I just like to take the example of fasting because that's the big thing, right? And fasting as a general principle is a spiritual tool that we learned mostly from the monks, right? The monks told us that when I learn how to fast, I learn how to discipline myself, right? And fasting, by definition, has to be what? Self-imposed, okay? So I impose a fast on myself. I learn to discipline myself by myself. And when I do that, I strengthen this muscle inside me. And then when it really matters, when it actually matters, I'm strong enough to resist something else. Or maybe someone's really bothering me and they're just not a good person, but I'm going to love them anyway. And instead of cussing them out, which is what I really want to do, I've disciplined myself to say, have a nice day. Right? That's when it actually matters. Whether or not you eat tameya doesn't matter. Okay? That's just the muscle. Right? It's kind of like, the example I always use, and sorry, we're not going to get through any of these points today, but the example I always think of is, a football game, right? You have a running back, okay? During the week, the running back is doing squats in the gym, right? You guys know what a squat is, right? Barbell on your back, right? Why is he doing squats? Because he wants his legs to be strong. Why does he want his legs to be strong? Because on Sunday, he's going to try to push this ball a few inches into 5,000 pounds of flesh, okay? And he's going to try to move the ball a few inches with everything he has, right? Now, let's be very clear. The squats on Tuesday, that's not the game. The game's on Sunday, right? So if I miss a squat here or there, that's okay, because that's not the game. The game is Sunday. Fasting is squatting. It's not the game. Right? God isn't really, really impressed that I looked through all the ingredients. That doesn't make me good. Right? God isn't like waiting to see how precisely I fasted. That's crazy. Right? I fast because I discipline me, because on Sunday, right, when I meet somebody who I don't like, or who doesn't like me, I'm going to have to really dig deep and love someone who is unlovable. I'm going to have to really dig deep into my ego in a fight with my spouse and say I'm sorry. I'm going to have to really dig deep with my kids and sacrifice for them. Right? That's the game. The fast is not the game. Does that make sense? So when I teach my kids that God is happy when I do these things, he's going to say, what kind of God is that? That's kind of weird God. Right? Now, which God am I talking about, by the way? Well, what country do we come from? Yeah, that God, right? So there is something called Ramadan, and that is not our fast. But that's how they fast. Their God is very particular, right? As soon as the bell goes off, you can eat. And when that bell goes off, you can't eat. And if you eat when the bell goes off, God is angry. That's nice. Knock yourself out. But that's not my faith. I don't have that God. He doesn't care about the bell. He's not a bell guy. Right? And so we have morphed our practices, and this causes the issues. Now, when I live in a Muslim country, and I say Muslim things, the kids go, yeah, well, that makes sense. That's what everyone at school does. In America, it's very different. You say these things, your kid hears them and goes, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. That's not squaring. It doesn't fit. Right? Because the contrast between here and the rest of the world is very great. In Egypt, it's not. In Egypt, we're demeaning to women in church, we're demeaning to women outside of church. It all fits, it all works. Right? Nobody bats an eyelash. Here, you demean women at church, and then you go out and you're like, those women out there are CEOs. We shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be treating them like that. We shouldn't be talking to them like that. All right, next one, parental influence driving youth away from the church. Lot to say here, but most of the youth that leave will tell you that they left because of their parents. Not because of the clergy, not because of the servants, but because of the parents. And when I say the parents need to be the parents, what does that mean? What does it mean to raise your child as a God-fearing child? And this is very important, all right? And if we stop at this point, it'll be great. What that means is you have to be a God-fearing parent. Okay? So if I want to raise a God-fearing child, that doesn't mean I took him to Sunday school. I took him to hymn class. I made him go on the retreats. That's not parenting. That's just forcing them to go to a location. Okay? And I can't tell you how many parents call me and their kids in bad shape, and they all kind of start the same way. We took him to every hymn class. We took him to every Sunday school. He was a deacon. He knew all the hymns. And they're justifying themselves to me, right? And I understand why they're doing that, right? Their life is collapsing, okay? But they're trying to say, I'm a good parent. I'm a good parent. I did all the right things. I did all the right things. And I have to ask you, who told you those are all the right things? How did you act at home? How did you treat your husband or wife? We said in the sermon today, how'd you treat the maid and the gardener and the waitress? Did you lie in front of them? Did you judge in front of them? Did you attack the clergy in front of them? That's the question, right? And so all of the saints, when they tell you about parenting, they don't say, make your kid go to the class. That's not parenting. You parent by being. You just be, right? You have to be a God-fearing person, and all that entails. And then the kids, you know, Abuna Dawood Lam'i has this great saying. He says, "El-tarbiyya btitshirib," from the parents, right? I'll say it in English. You know, the raising of children is absorbed by the kids. They just absorb it, right? And by the way, you almost can't mess it up. You almost can't mess it up, by the way. This whole fear thing that we have of, I'm scared, my kids, I'm scared. Don't be scared. Your kid's going to turn out just like you. You know how when you're growing up, that's a scary part. Okay. You know, you should be scared about that, especially George. I remember when I won't mention churches, but there was a church, not this one, in one of the states I lived in, and we would send our kids to hymn class, okay? And Abuna, who was great, he did an English Bible study for the parents while the kids are in hymn class. So we would go, and we'd put our kids in the hymn class, because that's what good parents do, and there's 40 kids in this class. And then Lois and I would go to the hymn class, the Bible study that Abuna did for us. How many parents? 3. Me, Lois, and some guy who doesn't know where he is. Okay? And I think to myself, gee, where'd all the parents go? And I'm kind of wondering. And then as soon as hymn class is ending, and they all know exactly when it ends, all of a sudden all the parents start walking up with Starbucks. Okay? And the kids are watching the parents coming back from Starbucks, and they're like, Mom, didn't you have a Bible study during this hour? Yeah, but Sienna, we don't go. Khalas, I'm a saint. I don't do that stuff. So it's like, gee, parents, what do you think your kids are going to do when they're 18? They're going to go to Starbucks. Don't you know anything? Because they're going to be just like you. That's what my dad did. He went to Starbucks. He blew off the meeting. So guess what your kid's going to do, right? So being a righteous parent isn't, I force them to go to hymn class, I'm good. No, being a righteous parent is, I went to the meeting while they were in hymn class. And then on the drive home, I talked to my wife about what was said at the meeting, and I was like, wow, that was such a good point. I wish I did that more. And I showed vulnerability as a parent in my own spiritual life, and apologized to my kid when I messed up, and became a role model of what a Christian is, right? That, your kid doesn't forget. Forget shoving them in hymn class. That's not going to work. So what we often do is we think, you know, I'm very scared, I've got to do the right things. You actually kind of don't have to worry about it. You just have to be the right person. And if your kids are messed up, don't be messed up. Fix yourself. You want your kids to have better characteristics. You know, as parents, we've all seen that moment when the kid says back to me the exact same thing I say to them. And I'm like, oh crap, I screwed this kid up. Right? And then you have to, you're like, mirror. It's a mirror time, right? It's a mirror moment. I've got to fix this. Okay? So, Gregory's laughing for some reason. Okay. I'll skip number 3. Why? Number 4. Judgmental experiences and shame-based messaging in the church. Kids, many kids come to here to church, any church, and they feel judged, they feel looked at, they feel condemned, they feel picked on, and they don't feel safe. Now, we can argue all we want about society and say society is bubble wrapping the kids and this whole safe thing is garbage and all the kids feel, I don't feel safe, and knock yourself out. You can have that discussion all you want, okay? And we can say society's all bad and it's because of the Democrats. Let's just go there, right? But you know what? That's the way they are. Okay? Now what are you going to do? So you can condemn them even more, and you can say, oh, that's because they're really bad, and let's attack them more and talk more about Biden. Okay, that's going to do really great wonders for your children. What I would suggest is we make the church a safe place. Safe, seen, and cherished. Our kids should feel safe, seen, not looked at, not stared upon, seen. Really seen and cherished and loved. You know, when Jesus was in Simon the Pharisee's house, and the sinful woman came in, and she started crying at his feet and washing them with her tears, and used her hair to dry the tears. Do you guys remember what Jesus said to Simon? Now, you guys know how big these houses are, right? They're not like our houses now. They're tiny houses. So the living room is like this big, okay? And a woman comes in off the street, who everyone knows is not a good woman, and starts crying and screaming in the middle of this living room. Okay? You guys can imagine the scene? The owner of the house is like, what is this woman doing in my house? And what does Jesus say to Simon? He remembers, do you see this woman? Well, of course I see her. She's right here, and she's screaming. That's a silly question, unless it's not. Do you see this woman? Because he doesn't. Simon thought if this man knew what kind of sinner she is, then he would not let her touch him. Does he see her? He sees a sin. He doesn't see her. And Christ asked him the question, do you see her? Actually see who she is. And that's what I mean by seen. The kids should feel seen. When I look into someone's eyes, they know I know them. They know I love them. They know I would do anything for them. And all of you can imagine in church growing up that one uncle or tante who, when they hugged you, actually loved you. Right? There's always that one person or one or a couple people at church, you just can't wait to see them. And we all still remember them. And we also, on the other side, remember the uncles and tantes who are faking it, right? The hypocrite ones. So, shame-based is not our approach as a Christian. We don't use shame and attacking and guilt to get people to do the right thing. Because if you're forced to do the right thing, it's not the right thing. This is what St. John Chrysostom says. Right? If you're imposing morality by force, then it's not morality. It's just the law. Make sense? Right? I mean, does anyone praise me because I don't rob a bank? No, because you rob a bank, I'm going to go to jail if I get caught. Right? So I can't walk around and say, hey, you know what? I don't rob banks. People say, big deal. Right? That's not a feather in my cap. That's not morality. That just means I don't want to break the law. But so we impose Christianity as a law, well, then it's not Christianity. It's not freedom. It's just, you got to follow this thing or God sends you to hell. Or worse, I'll judge you and talk about you behind your back. And I'll talk about you so much behind your back that you'll eventually leave the church. Because I want you all to know that in our community, there are going to be some of our kids who are going to do some really bad things. That's just going to happen. And what's our reaction as a community going to be to those kids? And they're going to be good parents and they're going to be whatever, but they're going to mess up. What are we going to do about that? Are we going to just rip them apart? Tear them piece by piece and gossip about them until they're parents and they can no longer show their face at church? Is that the goal? Is that what we're going to do? All right. Number 5, disillusionment regarding the treatment of women in the church. And obviously this is a thorny subject because part of this is liturgical, part of this is the ritual of the church and what women can and can't do. And we talked about this yesterday actually, but there is a bit of culture here as well. Right? Clearly we come from a male-dominated society, male-dominated culture, which of course has come into the church at some level. And so the question is, how does this sort itself out over the years? And this is going to be a challenge probably for the next 30, 40 years as we sort of figure out what can and can't happen in church, in the services, etc. But this is a real issue, and this is one that concerns a lot of people, because a lot of girls grow up and they're like, well, how come I can't do this, and how come I can't do that, and how come I'm told this? And not all of it, by the way, comes from the church. A lot of it comes from the parents. And a lot of the stuff some of the parents are telling the girls is horrible. True story, I was talking to a girl, I think she was in 10th grade at the time, and she said she was on a junior high girls retreat, and the servant said to her that when you're on your period, you're not allowed to read the Bible, and you're not allowed to touch the Bible. I said, what? I can't believe that. What's her name? What's the servant's name? We gotta excommunicate people at some point, right? This is ridiculous. Right? So these kinds of teachings are out there. Right? And we need to address them like head on. Like, let's have a day where we talk about crazy. Here's a list of 30 crazy things. This is crazy. Don't do crazy. Don't be crazy, right? Because a lot of this stuff is just kind of hidden in the things, right? And then the kids are like, Buna never says stuff like that. They're like, yeah, but this is very important. Teta taught me, that the evil eye will get you unless you wear a blue thing here. And so it's very important that you, right? And we have all these hypotheses going around. Okay, so anyway, the treatment of women in church, it goes deeper than just the service and can I dress as a deacon and all this other stuff. It's the attitude that we see. And I'll tell you one other thing. In our diocese in LA, we're having a little bit of trouble of boys marrying girls. No, not the LGBTQ thing. I mean, like, couples aren't coupling up. Kids aren't getting together. Okay? They date for a while. And then after a while, they all say the same thing. There are no good Coptic girls in our diocese. None. And then what do the girls say? There are no good Coptic guys in the diocese. Okay? Everybody sucks. And you're like, when everybody sucks, I think everybody does suck. And part of the problem, and I say this out loud now, is a lot of the boys watched fathers, forgive me, who are very Egyptian, very Arab, and very Muslim. And there's no way you can live in a society and not have Islamic influence enter the house. And so a lot of the stuff that you saw your dad do to your mom is not Christian. It's not okay. Right? A lot of that is from the other side. And what happens is the girls are all PTSD'd, right? Because they hear the word submit at the wedding ceremony. And by the way, we have girls all the time trying to change the wedding ceremony, where they say, can you not say that at my wedding? Why? Because when they hear the word submit, they remember what their dad did to their mom. And they think to themselves, I will never let my husband do that to me. And so a lot of the boys are walking around bravado, macho, hey, you must submit to me, you must submit to me. And of course they forget the other part of what St. Paul said in Ephesians, which is, you need to die for her. Forget that part, that's silly. Right? And the boys are walking around thinking, hey, everyone's got to submit, submit. And the girls are like, heck no. And a lot of the girls, I mean, they're just, they see a guy even act a little bit, you know, like a submit freak, and they just walk away. Right? So we have to be very careful. A lot of this stuff isn't in the church. A lot of this stuff is at home and what we've seen. And it's going to take us 50 years, 60 years to kind of work through the system. But we have to address this openly and talk about it. Right? Another issue is we don't talk about the taboo things, and we need to talk about the taboo things. Anybody have any questions? You guys can ask questions if you want. Yes, and Anthony raised his hand. He did, and I like him more.
I was going to say, what is your response, because I get that question all the time, is like, why can't we do this in church? Why can't... And I say, my first response is, St. Mary's the greatest in heaven, she's a female. And because I heard it from a Greek priest, actually. It's like, and then we go from there. But I still don't have a good response. So what is your elevator pitch to young girls?
Honestly, I don't think by the time, I mean, you can like, by the time we get to the point where they're asking those kinds of questions, often that isn't the question that's really the question, okay? When a girl says, I want to do this at church, and I want to do this, and how come I'm not equal, and how come I don't get to be with everybody else, and how come I, okay? That's coming from a place of feeling marginalized, feeling like I'm less, right? So it's not about wearing the white dress for 2 hours. It's about, I feel less than him. Now those same girls often at home, their parents are saying things like, well, you know, Habibi, you can dress like a deacon, and you can be blah, blah, blah. You can just sit over there, right? And she's seeing all the attention, you know, the video camera that the dad is doing on the deacon. Oh, he's holding a candle, video him, and then post it, and then talk about it, and Ibn Shammas, and blah, 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 blah. And she's sitting there like, I'm right here. Hello. Okay? So by the time she says, why can't I be a deacon, right? It's because 80 other things have happened. And she isn't saying, I want to wear a white dress and stand there. She'd rather be with her mom anyway. What she wants is to get the same attention he's getting, the same love he's getting, the same affection he's getting. Right? So that, I think, is the real problem. Right? And so, you know, by the time she's a teenager, you know, why can't I wear, I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know who hurt you. And then what I would do if I were you, there's no elevator pitch. Everyone is unique. So that you start asking questions and listening. And then you figure out, oh yeah, my dad always picked my brothers over me. My mom always posted videos of my brothers over me. They always talked about it with Tita. Right? That's the story. Let's focus on that now. It's a symptom, it's not the problem. Yeah, you know, I have interesting ways of looking at things. Thank you for the compliment, though. I appreciate it. Oh, George, sorry. Father George. No. Go ahead.
So first off, on the point of women, Nina Farid gave a very nice talk about that, and Nardine Tanius. So if we can have a follow-up on that one. They gave a very nice talk about that verse. Submit. What does that mean? What submit means, and it was very, very thoughtful. Second thing. I usually don't agree with you, but I agree with you on this one. So for the first one, the disconnect between the religious practices and the relationship is very, very important. But there is no relationship with someone that you don't know. And if this is his house, you need to come to his house. You can know him alone on a personal relationship after you establish some relationship on knowing him and having him in you, like communion. So I agree again with the theme of practices, yeah? But communion, in my opinion, starts with like a practice. Like you have to come and have communion. Whether you are ready or not ready, or like it's Sunday, having communion is not a when you feel like it, when you feel that you are ready, observe me and maybe one day you will come. I don't really agree with that, especially with communion. I think, for me at least, this is how I raised my kids, communion is not an option. You have communion, and then the other stuff is option. You don't want to be a deacon, it's fine. You don't want to be in Sunday school, it's okay.
So you've agreed with me twice. That's nice.
Yeah.
And I'll disagree with you once. So when you agreed with me, I agreed with you. So that's good. So that's 2. So it's 2. It's just 1 and 2, right? It's just. And I'm glad George brought up this point because he shows us very clearly what not to do, and that's just his role in life. Is I'm just kidding. No, what George is saying is. Someone cut off his mic, or at least turn the volume down so I can always out-yell him. George's point is very well taken, right? Communion is a non-negotiable, right? It's the Eucharist is always a non-negotiable, right? It's kind of the centerpiece of life in Christ, okay? And I agree with that, of course. The question, the only part I sort of disagree with, and this isn't a principle, this is an approach, right? Is how much force we apply, right? Because force is dangerous, okay? And especially with a teenager, right? Force is immediately met with counterforce, okay? So the moment you tell your kid you have to go to church, guess what the one thing they don't want to do is, right? So you have to be a little careful, right, and wise in how much you push, right? And every kid's different, okay? And you're the parent, and you know them better than anybody, right? What happens is we sometimes get our own head, like, no, this is the way I was raised. Wrong answer. What are people going to say at church? Wrong answer. We'll get judged by wrong answer, right? You have to be very in tune to them and think, how much should I push this kid versus that kid, okay? And at this moment, and how? I mean, I know people that would hit their kids, not hit them hard, but like, my kids are gonna, huh? Yeah, well, you deserved it. I always say hate is my love language. So that's, when I hate you, it's, I love you, right? So you have to be careful, right? Because the feeling of force is human nature. I don't want to be forced to do anything, right? You tell me, like one of the things I love about some speech givers, right? Like MLK, is the way MLK spoke was he inspired beauty. He didn't say this is wrong and this is bad and you shouldn't do this. He told you what is beautiful. And he said, do this, right? Wouldn't it be beautiful if it were like this? I have a dream, and let me just tell you about my dream, okay? So as parents, inspiring to beauty is a far more effective approach than force, right? So try to inspire, explain, teach, and don't get hung up on 1 week versus another. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? You can always win are you coming to church this Sunday? Oh, you're coming to church this Sunday. We're going early. You're going to win that. But when he's 19, you're going to lose. And you lose big, right? So don't win the 11-year-old fight and lose the rest of their lives, actually. And most of the kids who are just gone, they tell me stories about what their parents did to them. I cry sometimes when I hear these stories. Like, you poor thing. I wouldn't come either. I mean, religious trauma is a real thing, right? So people are traumatized. I mean, I know lots of youth, they'll walk into a church and they can't handle that tune. the Coptic, whatever, the English, whatever, it's not Coptic English, it's the church tune triggers them. I was so hurt in this place by so many people. I can't, I have to leave. Right? So we have to be careful. Right? And no doubt, kids are much gentler, much more fragile now. They're all weak sauce, right? They're made out of paper. Okay? No problem. That's true. I don't know how to fix it. That's a societal problem. I don't know what to do about it. I don't know how they got here. I can try the best I can, but they're all bubble wrapped. And all day long they hear, is that okay? Is that how you feel? Do you want to take the quiz today? If you're not feeling okay, then we won't do that. Okay. Right? That's all they hear, right? And it's crazy, but they're all like this, right? So we have to be, as parents, careful of that reality. Yeah, Mira.
I just want to, since the comment for George is that, I think what he was trying to say is the importance of Tuesday
And we're having a marriage
practice.
therapy session after.
No, it's more of like how can we explain the why of the Tuesday practice? So I think we focus a lot on the Tuesday practice, and we don't tell the kids that you have a game on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we forget to tell them
Yeah.
there's a game and you need to be ready for it, and you have to give your best throughout the week, because Sunday you will be tested.
Mhm.
And it's not a failure, but it's a binary. Like, it's either you're going to make it or you're not, and I want you to make it, and that's why I have emphasis that you have to practice.
What are you going to say, Magda?
So I sort of have a two-part question. The first is, how many of these main themes do you attribute to culture? I'm assuming you're going to say a lot, so I'll just ask you the second
lot.
part. Thinking of the original quote, Desmond Tutu quote, how do we separate culture from the church to, sadly, preserve our Christianity?
That's a really big question, and one that a lot of people are spending a lot of time thinking about. And the answer is not clear. So the question is, how do we separate culture from Christianity, from Orthodoxy, from Coptic Orthodoxy? I'll take a step back and just say, look, every church has culture in it. Okay? American church, right? The Ethiopian church, it looks and smells and acts Ethiopian, right? The Coptic church looks and acts and smells Egyptian, right? Russians act Russian, Greeks act Greek. Every church has its culture, and the Russians have vodka during the service, right? That's part of it, okay? That's okay, right? Yeah, after communion, like one time an Abuna told me, like, after communion, they offered him a little vial of vodka afterwards. I'm like, because we have to have coffee. They just have vodka. It's okay. But anyway. People are like, why don't we have vodka? No, that's... Okay, so the point is, it's perfectly normal that the Coptic church is Arab and Egyptian. Absolutely, right? That's just the way it is, and it would feel weird if it wasn't. Okay, hard. Egyptian, all right. Yes, all right. So, yeah.
I mean the negative undertones and traditions that, you refer to it as at home, this can sometimes happen. Sometimes parents do,
Yeah.
and what I'm hearing is culture. I'm hearing the historical ignorance. I'm hearing what it is that's become part of the Orthodox, or our church, our community. So how do we remove a lot of those negative, punitive?
I think the only answer is education. I think we need to overtly address some of these practices and discuss them and say, is there a biblical foundation? Is there a traditional foundation? Is there an Orthodox foundation to this? Or is it a cultural norm? right? And I think it's important that we address them just very 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And just discuss them. Because I think, you're right. They're just kind of in us. And then every once in a while, I'll come across a 22-year-old who's been raised and born in America, and then they're saying all this crazy stuff. And like this one girl came up to me and said, I'm giving a lesson on judgment, and I wanted your help. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, she's like, well, I was talking about the evil eye, and I was telling them how it comes in threes, el-hasad bigi bit-talata or whatever. And I was explaining to them that the one way to stop the evil eye is by, and I was like, oh, so you're talking about voodoo, right? You're just superstition. And she's looking at me like, oh, this isn't orthodox. She's born in America. And she's like, this isn't, I'm like, no, this is, it's Turkish evil eye, and it's totally woo, right? So I don't know where any of this is coming, but she was teaching in Sunday school. So she had no idea all of this, right? So we have to address that, like the evil eye, for example, hasad, jinx, nadr, all of these practices that are there. We have to ask, sorry, Shanuda did something that made me laugh. We have to ask ourselves whether or not these are Orthodox Christian practices that have a basis in the fathers, or whether or not they're something that we've inherited. If we inherited them, they're fine in Egypt, but they're not fine here, because here, you tell someone, well, in my church we teach jinx, and we teach that I have to wear an eye, and that wards off the jinx, and otherwise, when I hit my foot, it's because someone jinxed me, and that's why I hit myself. And they're looking at you like, oh, you're crazy, right? Where is this in the Bible? Where is this in, my mom told me. Okay, so I think education, that's all I have. Yes, Shnuda. Okay, next thing. You guys done? خلصنا? كفاية? طيب. Nobody wants a nap? No, I'm good. What number are we on? 6. Absence of relatable mentors and examples of Christ in the lives of youth. There's one word I want to focus on here. Relatable. Okay? For some reason, and I think this is cultural, we believe that authority comes with power, and power comes with distance. Right? So if I am powerful, I'm not supposed to engage with you. I'm here and you're there. Okay? And I think as a community, we really need to start being relatable to one another. Right? The youth love it when you're relatable. Right? And this is exactly what Jesus said. Unless you become like children, you cannot see the kingdom of heaven. Right? So as parents, as adults, we get worse with time. We get bitter, we get jaded, we get angry, we get resentful. We don't trust people. So you don't know how bad people are. We teach the kids that other people are bad, to watch out for them. They're going to try to get you. And we have to learn to stay like kids. And when you stay like a kid, then you can relate to the kids. Right? So the kids will say, there's nobody who's mentoring me. And one of the problems, again, is we have a model that isn't the Christ model, right? What did Jesus do? WWJD. He had disciples. And what did he do? He discipled them. That's it. And what do you do when you disciple someone? What did Jesus do with his disciples? He hung out and he ate, like most of the time. That's what you do. You hang out and you eat, right? So let's do that with our kids. Hang out and eat with the kids we serve, right? It's not about everyone sit in a circle at the lesson. I've just sat 3 hours in liturgy. Shh, don't talk. Shh, don't talk. Okay, in tabarra, go outside the class. You're bad. What is that? Right? That Sunday school relationship, that's not a relationship. That's a me disseminating information to you that you must know. Well, okay, I can Google that, by the way, and get a better lesson from AI. So I don't know why you're even standing. I can actually simulate you and make you look better than you do, and give the same lesson in a more interesting way, and remove the wart on your nose, right? But, so this doesn't create a relationship. Me standing and you sitting and me talking to you, right? So this is not what Jesus did. This is not what St. Anthony did. This is not what St. Macarius did. This is not what our fathers did. They didn't sit in a circle and said, I talk to you. What did St. Anthony do with his disciples? They hung out. Did they pray all the time? Of course not. But they talked about the kingdom of God. They talked about themselves. They talked about what they're struggling with this week. They're talking about where are we going to get dates for the rest of the month. Let's just hang out and eat. What do you think St. Anthony did? St. Anthony passed away when he was 105 years old. What do you do for that long? You hang out. He hung out with his disciples. So we need relatable mentors, people in the church who get you, right? Every one of you should know one kid in this church and be looking for that kid when you see them. And that kid should be looking for you when they come to church. Every one of you should have somebody you hang out with, you joke around with, you pal around with. You come down to their level, right? And many of the things that we do, unfortunately, like, your kid shows up and shows you a TikTok video. Hey, Dad, look at this TikTok video. What do? We launch off into the lecture. TikTok is ruining your mind. Why aren't you studying? Why don't you pray instead? Everything's bad. This is corruption. This is brain rot. If you spent half this time doing... Okay, I won't show you the TikTok video. Never mind. I was just trying to have a relatable moment with you, but you ruined it. Watch the stupid TikTok video. Just send them your own TikTok video, right? Be relatable, right? And be a partner with them. Meet them where they are. That's where they are. They have the attention span of a gnat. 7 seconds, that's all you get, right? Society made them this way. I can't help it. So we got to have 7-second attention spans. Right? We can argue, we can fight, we can throw their phones against the wall, we can say, TikTok is made by China, China is bad. Okay, nice. Now what? Relate to your kids, and as servants, we have to relate to the kids. Okay. 7. I know I'm just being very harsh and critical, so you're all going to have to forgive me. And Tant, your point is well taken. Arabs are not Egyptians. So true Egyptians come from Copts. And that's the origin of the people. The people in Egypt who are Muslim are not authentic Egyptians from the pharaohs like us. They are Arab conquerors who came and invaded our country. They are not us. مش كده Tant? Yes. And I have to add something, that most pharaonic people, ancient ancestors of Egypt, were bald. So I'm just saying, if you have a lot of hair, la mu'akhza. You may be an Arab invader, دخل كده في الوسط. Sorry. We're safe. تفضلي يا ماني. تسونية. طبعا. Yeah. Yeah. So Tasoni is saying, it's not just you go down to them, but you have to take them back up. My point is, we start at the up, right? And sometimes we say, when you are ready, you can come talk to me. لما تحترم نفسك, then you can talk to me. When you are stop this sin, then you come talk to me. When you are good, you can talk to me. Right? And that's the opposite, right? Christ came into the world when it was still broken. Okay. Relationship and family stress leading to disengagement after marriage. We have a crisis. Marriages are breaking apart in very record numbers, okay? Especially in LA. I know we're all bad in LA. You guys don't have problems here because you're all in the rain. But in... marriages are breaking up very in very large numbers, right? And part of the reason is because we have a society that allows marriages to break up, right? In Egypt, you couldn't really break up. It's very shameful and embarrassing, and so you just stayed in the bad marriage for the rest of your life. Here, people say, you know what, I'm out. And part of the issue that's causing a lot of stress on the families, on the kids. So a lot of the kids at the church who have the big problems, you poke into their lives just a little bit and you realize, oh, their parents are a mess, right? And a lot of times the parents need to be parented. I've had people tell me, I have to parent my mom. I have to listen to her problems. She cries about her dad, and I have to console my mom. And I'm 12, right? And you're like, oh, you don't have parents, you have children for parents, right? So that's a problem. Okay, I'll try to get through them. Are you guys done? Too bad. Okay.
I think that's a very important point that is not unique to this time.
What's that? The one I just said? Yeah, I agree. Okay.
I think there is a disconnect between what we live in this society and what is taught in our church. And that discordance creates a time where people don't know how to act in their marriages. And the lessons that we teach our kids about what makes a good marriage within the church, I think needs to be updated to our current society.
Yeah, I agree. I give a lot of talks on marriage to the youth. And as you can tell, I don't sugarcoat. And I tell them how hard it's going to be, and how difficult it is, and how much digging you have to do, and how much selfishness you have to get rid of, and how much you have to sacrifice for another person. And a lot of them are like, we've never heard anyone say anything like this ever. And I'm like, you're 23, and you should be dating to get married, and you have no idea what you're walking into, right? So I agree with that. And a lot of times the message we hear is, as long as God's in the middle, you'll have no problems. That is not true. God will be in the middle and you will have problems, right? And that's how that works. And then you're going to work through those problems by digging deep and learning to sacrifice for another person, right? And I don't think we give that message enough, right? What's the reality of what marriage looks like? All right. Nobody wants a nap, huh? Okay, number 8. Superficial relationships within the church and emphasis on appearances. This is a hot button for me. So we're gonna get into this just a little bit. We can't keep hearing things like "Innes hayulu e alena." What are people gonna say about us? This is very dangerous, toxic talk. Don't say that to your kids. I remember when my mom used to say that to me, I would lose my mind. I would yell back. I don't care what anyone thinks about me. I still don't. So as a church, if you're disciplining by saying, what are the people going to say? That's not Christianity. That's fear of people. And we have a very strong vibe in the church of we really worry about what people think about us. And I talked with the youth yesterday, and I said, in St. James, it says the opposite, right? St. James says, confess your sins to one another. The people in the church should be that kind of community, that therapeutic community, who I can talk to about my problems. Instead, we have the opposite. I have to hide my problems. Don't tell anybody what's happening in the house. Don't tell anyone we're having problems. Pretend everything is fine. And then at church, we all smile. How are things? Oh, good. How are you? Good. It's raining again. Yeah, that sucks. Okay. Right? And we have these very shallow, superficial, in LA, we say, it's sunny again. Yeah, that's nice. Shots fired.
I think it's
Yeah.
just as much of an issue now with the younger generation than it was with us growing up. It seems a bit more transparent.
It's better, right? And this is part of the 50-year transition plan that we have to move towards. Yeah, we'll all be dead before this is fixed. But the point is, we have to start it. No, don't hope for your kids. Hope for your great-grandkids, maybe, statistically speaking. Right? So, but I'm just warning the parents that it's not a good approach to scare them, to make the kids scared of the community of believers whom I'm supposed to be safe, seen, and cherished. Like, there are some parents that tell their kids, don't post anything on Instagram when you go out. Why? Because the people at church could see it. I don't care what God thinks. I don't care about your spiritual life. I don't care if you go to heaven or not, but just make sure the people at church don't see it. Really, that's number one on your list? What the people at church are? That's who you're scared of? Isn't that your community? Aren't these the people that are supposed to support each other? Aren't we supposed to be there for each other, not judge each other? And that's who I'm scared of, the people at church, the body of Christ that I'm a part of as well. It shouldn't be like that. We shouldn't be scared of each other. We shouldn't be trying to hide from each other. We should be open with one another. Perception of the church as homophobic and fostering unchristian hatred. That's spot on. Again, we come from an Islamic culture. In Islam, you're supposed to push homosexuals off a cliff and kill them. So there's no way that kind of thinking isn't somehow infiltrated our thinking. And so we have to be really careful with how we speak, especially since we now live in a society that doesn't think those things at all. Right? And so you can say one thing, you can say, they don't get married in my Coptic Orthodox church, and I agree with you 1,000%, and that's okay. But saying, well, God's going to send all these people to hell, and they're all going to burn and fire and Sodom and Gomorrah, that kind of rhetoric is not seen and taken well by your kids, nor is it very Christian. Right? Jesus reached out to the lepers. He reached out to the prostitutes. He reached out to the sinners. Right? We have to have that kind of vibe, right? Not the hateful one. Need for the church to address sexual issues and remove taboos. There are a lot of people scared to talk about sex in the church. They don't even talk about it, and you don't discuss it, and it's a very taboo topic, and so everybody has to go outside and hear it from their friends and or TikTok. Okay? So if you want your kids to learn from TikTok, very good source of useful, correct information, then don't talk about it at home, and don't worry, they will compensate by going to TikTok and or another 11-year-old who is equally knowledgeable as TikTok. Yeah. Yes, I am joking now for the evil humans who would like to clip that one piece out and send it to my bishop. That's not what I meant. For the people who have clipped it out and sent it to my bishop, I greet you, all of you. God bless you and give you long life to clip. All right, last thing, church views, see, we never got past this first slide. I have another 18 slides, and I'm going to make you all sit through. Okay, church viewed, yeah, you're all going to be asleep. Church viewed as a means to an end rather than embodying Christ's presence. Okay, once again, the church is not the goal. Every once in a while, someone will say, I love church. And I have to stop them, and I say, you mean you love God in the church? I love hymns. You mean you love to praise God through the hymns. I love service. You mean I love God and I love to serve him through his people. Right? Right. So we have to be very careful that the church isn't the thing I love, because nobody just loves church. That's weird. We're here because we love God, and God loves us, and he loved us first. Right? That's the important part. And we reach him through the church. Right? No one ever gets, on a train to Vancouver and says, man, I love trains. No, I want to go to Vancouver. No one ever goes to a train station and say, which train you going? Which one you want to get on? He goes, I don't care. I just want to get on a train. I love trains. It's kind of weird, right? You say, well, where do you want to go? And so when I'm on the train, I'm really excited about my destination, am I not? Right? I really want to get to Vancouver or whatever city. I'm not just in it for the train. Okay? And sometimes we think all about the train, and we're like, man, I love this train. Yeah, but the destination, remember the destination, right? So the church is not a means to an end. You aren't saved because you came early and stood here a long time. Okay? And we have to be very careful on how we measure spirituality, right? When spirituality is measured as, when did you come? Did you come every week? How many times did you come? How long did you stay? What am I measuring? Time? I'm measuring time. That's the measure of spiritual life. That's the measure of being a good person. This person's really good. They come a lot to church. Is that the measure of a good person? Did Jesus say things like that? Spend a lot of time? That's not the measure. That's not what he said, right? What did he say? I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty. I was naked. I was in prison. I was sick. That's what he said. He didn't talk about, you got to come early, come a lot, come often. The more time you spend, the more righteous you are. Right? Church is a means to an end. It's not the end itself. I remember I heard a sermon, I'll end with this. Abu Nadud Lamri was giving a sermon about Holy Week, and he was giving it to servants. And he said, Holy Week is coming, and I know you're all excited for Holy Week, and you're all going to spend a lot of time in church. And he said, but I want you to remember that all those people who are lonely that you visit, they're still lonely during Holy Week. And all those people who need food, they still need food during Holy Week. And then he kind of went after them. He said, all of you are going to go to church a lot during Holy Week, and you're going to feel really good about yourself. I went a lot. And he said, but all those people who need the service, they all still need service, and they're all still there, and they all still need love. So don't get too content with yourself, even self-righteous, by saying, oh, you didn't come to the morning Pesach? I did. Okay, that's nice, right? Don't measure your spiritual life by the means. Measure it by the end. Okay, that's enough clippable materials, I think, for next slide. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I have one.
Oh.
I'm still agreeing with this, though.
It's actually better when you disagree.
I'll try to disagree in private. So I just want to confuse everyone.
I want you to disagree in public.
It's going to be tough for you. في حاجة I know it in Arabic, I don't know it in English, so I'm going to say it in Arabic. You'll probably translate it. كان في قصة عن راهب وطلع قديس. كان الأسقف بتاعه بيقول له خد سبت واملاه ميه، والسبت ده كان مخروم وكان بيروح ويرجع، وبعدين اداله الانالوجي ان انت every time you're cleansing، يعني بتغسل. فبربط ده دايما بالحضور الكنيسه and you're not really into it and you're forcing yourself. It's like this is how I was raised. My mom was raised me this way. It's like cleaning. Sometime in the future it will be cleaned and it will something will sit. So first translate this example, and then what do you think about this in the forcing?
Okay. Actually, it's funny. I told that story yesterday at the youth meeting. So the story is, there's a monk who told the monk. The story is actually, I can't remember anything in the Bible. I read it and I forget. So he said, go get me a basket, fill it with water, and bring it to me. So he filled it with water, and as he filled it, it's a wicker basket, so all the water flushes out, right? He brings it, and he goes, where's the water? There's no water. So he goes back several times, and every time he brings the basket, it's empty. There's no water. And the guy goes, well, see, you're like this basket. You're full of holes, and all the water leaves, right? But after you've read the Bible several times, the Bible has cleansed you, right? Yeah, and this is what Jesus said, right? You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. Okay, so that's the example you're saying. So what What George is saying is sometimes I may not really be into it in church and I may not be there to pray, but he's big on this force your children, and that's obviously the recurring theme here as Mira shakes her head, no, 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 no. I'm just guessing what's going on. I don't know.
You're staying in my house, you know that.
The problem is you're staying in the house. That's because I get to leave. You have to deal, okay? I just drop bombs and walk out, right? So we're saying, so George is back on his theme of I want to force people, and sometimes, I'm just kidding, but sometimes I agree with that, right? So many times in my life, right, I didn't want to go to church. I came to church and I had one of the best liturgies of my life, right? This has happened to me many times. Or I hear a sermon I wasn't expecting and it was beautiful. Or a part of the epistle that really I hadn't read before or hadn't really thought about and it hits you, right? So what George is advocating is just because an 11-year-old kid says, I'm not feeling God today, you don't say, okay, well then never mind, right? And because you could be exposed to something in church that moves you, right? In fact, you could just see somebody who does something and you're like, wow, that was amazing, right? Or someone talks to you in a way that you didn't think would. So many great things happen at church, right? And so waiting and saying, well, if I'm not in the mood, then I'm not going to go, that's not a good idea. And I agree 1,000%. And I don't think many of the parents here would like say, oh, okay, unless you're in the bubble wrap world, right? Which is like, oh, you're 10 and you don't feel like going, okay, then I'm not advocating that, right? It's like a kid in the 3rd grade who says, I don't feel like memorizing the multiplication table. That's nice, memorize it, right? That's, I'm glad you feel that way, I'll take that into consideration, now shut up and memorize it, right? So that's what we tell kids. Because, in your 3rd grade, you cannot assess what you need to know. Like, I don't know why I need to learn multiplication. Well, I don't really care. I can try to explain it to you, but we're going to learn it, right? I agree with this approach, especially in memorization, right? Because kids, when they're young, they can memorize anything, right? So if you can get them to memorize Psalms, you can get them to memorize stuff when they're little, they'll never forget it. And then that becomes a language for them later in life, right? So I'm all for the kind of encouraged, forced memorization when you're young, because that bears fruit the rest of their lives. And it's really nice to have those. Like sometimes I wish I knew Psalms that I had memorized or something that I could turn to, and then I see, I'll come across someone, Protestant who actually knows the Bible, right? And then he'll say, well, the Lord says, blah, 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 and he'll just spit out a Psalm. And I'm like, that's what I want to know, right? Say that again and just keep saying it to me when I need it, right? So I agree with that. I was going to disagree, but now I can't remember why I was going to disagree. If you said it, it's most likely I have to disagree. What's that? Thank you. Right, so where Bishoy and I disagree is, no, I'm kidding. The problem becomes when, as a parent, I take the easy route, right? When I teach my kid, don't even worry about the relationship, don't even worry about the feeling, don't even worry about just go. As long as you go. And then what you suggested, which makes sense, which I sort of fleshed out, which is, things happen. What's that? Yeah, some drops come, good things happen there. Just go because of that. Sometimes parents, either out of ignorance or laziness, they just shut up and go, right? Just go. And they don't finish the sentence of, well, because maybe you'll run into someone, or maybe something good will happen. Remember last week when you didn't want to go, but then you ran into your friend and it was really nice, okay? So parents stop there, okay? Because, frankly, in our culture, you can stop there. I'm dad. I just said go. It's done, right? And so in America, you can't stop there. You got to finish the sentence. You got to go. You have to go, but I want you to go because, and don't say you have to go. I want you to go because I really think that good things happen. And it doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does. So all I'm suggesting is you finish the sentence, right? And let them know the why. The kids here need the why, right? Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Point number 8, the superficial relationship with the church. there's something that I encountered, I'm not sure if I'm the only one, but people feel like when somebody asks you, how are you doing? I have to say good. And I have to say, oh, just like keep the superficial thing. Because if I'm going to church and I'm a servant and I'm a good person, I cannot not have, like, I can't have problems because that will reflect bad on God. So I'm here to save God's face and be like, yeah, everything, like, I might be going through chemotherapy, right? And people will be like, how are you doing? Oh my God, thank God for cancer. Why are you thanking God for cancer? This is what I'm thinking. He doesn't have illness. He did not give you cancer. Like, you thank God for being tolerant for the, you know, the experience, but this is one of the things that I struggle is that why are we, like, it's in ourselves to like protect God's image. It's not just our appearance. There's an image that we have to keep, that my life is really good because I just come to church. So that was my comment there.
Yeah, and I think that what's actually more effective is the transparency, right? I think being honest, especially even as a parent, right? When a parent messes up and then says, hey, I'm sorry, I messed up, to their kids. You know, there are a lot of people like, you never say sorry to your kids, but I disagree with that completely, right? I think you absolutely say sorry to your kids when you mess up, because it shows you're real, right? It shows that you have good days and bad days, right? There are even some people that suggest that you let your kids see you fight as a couple, right? Not the big nasty ones, just the, you know, the little, you know, not the why did I marry you fight, but the, you know, the little ones, right? The toothpaste squeezing ones. Yeah, exactly. You know, you got to put a pillow over the thing before you know, and because then the kid knows that people fight, right? Because I remember talking with a woman, and she was like, she was talking about a fight she had with her husband, and I said, yeah, I had that fight with my wife last week, and she's like, you guys fight? And I'm like, of course we do, right? I mean, who told you we don't, right? The fact that she thinks that other couples don't fight is weird, right? She's like, my parents never fought. And I'm like, of course they did, right? They just did it behind closed doors. And so, unfortunately, she has a bad image, a wrong image of marriage, that it's this, you know, rainbows and popsicles, or whatever the expression is, right? So, unicorns. The unicorns poop rainbows. That's not important. So I think that transparency is important, and I'm not into protecting God's image. I don't think He needs me to protect His image. He's good. I don't need to be His lawyer and defend Him. He's good. Any other questions? You're all bored out of your minds. George made you come here. Just remember that this is George's fault. So just remember that. Yeah, exactly. So when you see the boys around church, just give them a hug, you know? Let them know it's okay.
I'm just going to plug something about observing parents arguing, that it can actually be helpful and healthy as long as they also see the repair that's being made.
It's important that after the fight, they see you hugging and talking like normal, like, yeah, we got a fight, we talked through it, we figured it out, and now everything is fine, right? Because there's some kids, as soon as they see their parents fight for the first time, are like, are you getting a divorce? You know, and you're like, no, this is number 8,942, you know, number 8,943 is coming tomorrow, probably. So, anyway. I mean, not that Los and I fight, we actually don't, but I know the rest of you do, so I think it should be noted. Lois has a halo over her head because of me. She has to, that's true. Any other questions? Sorry, we've been here so long, and you're all tired and sleepy, jittery and angry and bitter. Or is that just George? Okay, just hungry. All right, and glory be to God forever, amen.
Thank you so much, Mark. And make a thirst to say, Our Father, art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. Lead us not into temptation, and Christ is all. Go in peace, peace with you all.
لو عايزين, if you guys want to take a picture, we're going to take a picture in the front with Abuna and Mark. If you want to come, if you don't want to, it's okay. Every time I say I post it, yeah, every time I say Anybody wants to take a picture? Come front. No.